Welcome. Today we're going to take a look at what strong content looks like in your writing. So what is strong content? So regardless of what kind of writing that you're doing, if you're looking at, say, doing a narrative versus doing an essay, regardless of what your outcome is, you are a writer, and the writer's purpose is to communicate really strong content, strong ideas, strong information to the reader. To be effective in this, a writer has to use strong content and have something strong to communicate. Let's take a look at an example here to get us started. Throughout history, no symbol has been as important to the heritage and image of America as the cowboy. Although cowboys are only economically necessary for a few short decades, the symbolism and values they left have helped define America. The greatest significance that the cowboy brings to our country is the sense of personal freedom. As well, the cowboy embodied the masculine image of a tough, rugged outdoorsman who could handle any problem with grit and style. So we see here a piece that has strong content. We've got a lot of information that's included in just a couple of sentences. We have nice, clear information that's coming across. The topic is very narrow, so it's not going off onto any kinds of tangents. It's just staying on topic really well. And it all works together. Let's take a look at another piece here to get us going. Recycling is a topic that tends to bore people half to sleep. There's just no good way to make brown glass and green glass sound cool. Interestingly, no matter how dull that a presentation about how to put what items into what bin sounds like a snoozer, without recycling, life is going to get much, much worse for us. Here's the deal. We are running out of resources. Oil is running low, water is running low, food is running low, and all of these resources are absolutely necessary to continue our way of life in the decades to come. So, finding a way to convince people that preserving the resources we already have is important and needs to become an exciting topic. So what we have here is we have a fairly narrow piece, an opinion piece about recycling. And it acknowledges some of the difficult parts about communicating about recycling to an audience, that it's not particularly exciting, it's not high technology, it's not really new, it can be a little bit boring, but it's very important. And so I think that since this writer is acknowledging that piece, it actually strengthens the piece of writing. We're communicating here a nice narrow topic, communicating it in an interesting way, can definitely catch the reader's attention with this, and cause the reader to want to continue reading the piece. Now, in weak content, our purpose is still the same. Our purpose is still for the writer to communicate strong content to the reader. So an ineffective writer is either has nothing of real value to communicate, just has some little bits and pieces, but not necessarily something that's really strong. Or another possible problem is that an ineffective writer is not communicating the content well. So maybe a writer has something really great to say, but just isn't getting it across in a strong way. So it comes across as weak content. Let's take a look at an example here. Cowboys are pretty cool. They did lots of things like followed cows and kept them from running away. Cowboys only worked for a little while. Cowboys were free and cool. So here we have the same basic idea really as the earlier piece about cowboys, but it's presented in a manner that's not particularly interesting. We're missing out on the depth and the breadth of the idea. We don't have the nice specific details. We don't have this idea kind of fleshed out so that it's particularly interesting. This is not engaging writing here. This is weak content. So this is not going to encourage the reader to continue forward with this particular piece. Weak content. Let's take a look at another piece here. People should recycle. Recycling saves some stuff and makes stuff cheap. It's important, but no one cares. So here in this piece, and believe it or not, this is actually a real piece. So here in this piece, we have the same basic ideas that recycling is important, it saves our resources, and it's a little bit of a tough sell sometimes because it doesn't come across as being particularly interesting as a topic, but this is done in such a non-engaging way that the content comes across as being particularly weak. This here, I would say, is where a writer just doesn't have something interesting enough to say to really catch the reader's attention and then to maintain that attention throughout the piece. Let's take a look at this piece here and let's evaluate this for the content. Do you ever see a young kid or teenager smoking a cigarette or drinking alcohol? Well, this might not be the case for some people, but there are teenagers and kids smoking and drinking all around the world. Some countries do not have laws about teens smoking or drinking, but the United States does. Although the United States has laws preventing teenagers and youth to purchase cigarettes or alcohol, the laws do not necessarily prevent alcohol and tobacco use amongst teens. How are teens getting involved with cigarettes and alcohol? Things such as advertising affect the age at which teens start drinking or smoking cigarettes. Second, bad parenting, poor parenting can lead to kids being allowed to drink or smoke. Third, teens being around poor influences. How can people reduce the age at which teenagers start drinking or smoking? No matter what cause, teenagers across the country are smoking and drinking. People can help prevent and stop teen alcohol consumption and tobacco intake. So here what we have is we have some really interesting ideas. So we have this idea of teens and their health issues with drinking alcohol and smoking cigarettes. Definitely a problem, definitely something that we see thousands of people dying from every year, and we know from research that when people start drinking and smoking at young ages, that they're more likely to continue drinking and smoking and end up with long-term or even lifelong addictions. Not a good situation. But in this piece here, I don't know if you noticed it, but there are so many mistakes throughout this piece of writing that it made it really hard to read. I had to slow down as I was reading the piece just because there are small mistakes here and there, typically grammar mistakes. A verb missing in one sentence, words that were put together in a strange manner in another sentence. So here what we have is we've got pretty good content. I mean, the ideas are interesting, the information is interesting. But unfortunately, because of the way that this has been presented, it comes across in a difficult manner just because of those errors that are in there. So let's take a look at this piece here. Let's evaluate this for content. How would you like to go from an unknown single mother or father on welfare with no real future to the richest person in Scotland virtually overnight? It sounds like a fairy tale, but sometimes big dreams really do come true. J.K. Rowling is a pure example of a modern-day Cinderella story. Okay, so look at this here. It's just 2 sentences, so it's a very short piece. We're not looking at something that's an entire essay or even an entire paragraph, really. It's very short. But what this writer has done well is that this writer has caught the reader's attention and maintained the reader's attention. The content, therefore, is being delivered from the writer to the reader in a way that is really interesting and makes the reader say, oh, I want to keep reading this and find out more. So what do you want to do with your content? You want to make sure that you're staying focused on the topic. If you wander down a bunny trail and end up on other subtopics or other bits of the topic, it doesn't tend to go very well. Stick to your topic. If you run out of content, you run out of ideas and information, brainstorm more content than what you actually need. And therefore, you'll have information that you can push aside and say, I don't necessarily need this. That's a much easier thing to do than to try to create new content as you're working on a piece. Make sure that you're including strong depth, breadth, and detail throughout your entire piece. It will give your reader lots of information so that your reader has a strong understanding of the content. So make sure that your content starts out with strong brainstorming. This is how you can collect a lot of ideas from the very beginning. You can then pare down those ideas as you're working on your piece. You can research, so you can ask a variety of different questions dealing with your topic and then go out and research those. Find quotes, find conclusions, find studies that are done on this so that you can use that research to your benefit. Make sure that you're staying really well organized. Organization can look very different for different pieces of writing, but regardless of what style of organization that you use, it's got to be logical, it's got to be natural, it's got to come across in a clear manner so that your content, your ideas are being communicated from the writer to the reader. At this point, what you should know and be able to do is to know what content and writing is, be able to create and use content, and understand a couple of different ways that you can improve upon your own content in your writing, as well as when you're working with other writers, such as your peers, on their writing too. I hope this information has been helpful to you and to your content. Good luck in your writing.